Assalamualaikum to Sir Rahman and my fellow friends. So today me and my group members going to present the topic of the good governance in the public sector, and the issue will be the corruption. Okay, so what is the good governance? Good governance has been defined by the World Bank as the implementation of sound and accountability management development in accordance with the democratic and the market values, avoidance of misplacement of investment funds, prevention of political and administrative corruption, execution of budgetary control, and establishment of legal and political framework for the development of business activities. So, we can conclude that the good governance is really important and necessary for the development of the country, which is the good governance also driving force for a political government to realize good governance is start from the process of public policy formulation, growth, and the execution of a public administration bureaucracy that operates transparently, effectively, and efficiently to improve the welfare of the people. If the government maintain the good governance principle, it will improve the relationship between the government and the well-being of people. Besides that, the government could enforce the good governance principle in the public sector, because the stakeholders such as the states, residents, and the public sector values will be improved in the same time if the public sector is implement efficiency.
Assalamualaikum and good day, Ramlan. My name is Nafisa Akila, and I'm going to explain about an ethical issue that happened in the news. So there are an ethical issue that happened among governance in public sector that shows in the news on the bigger issue of corruption. So according to Noreha in 2017, public sector corruption, either actual or perceived, has a significant influence on public perspective onto government's purity, integrity, transparency, reliability, and legitimacy, as well as the quality of their administration's governance. Corruption was once a very serious case that took place in Malaysia and still happening widely in here. That is why we have our own Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission, MACC. For example, in the case of companies pays bribes to get information in order to prepare bids for a project or contract. Bribery for the purpose of obtaining information that will give them an unfair advantage in preparing their bids is likewise covered by this provision. According to Datuk Nur Azlan Razali, by his investigation, the public sector had the most bribery incidents, particularly in the law and procuring department. So based on the data given, the MACC has detained 702 government workers for corruption between January 2019 and June 2020. Furthermore, as a decent people, we do believe in our government system and their transparency, but if the government has breached the trust of the people, that would be a problem to gain back the trust from the people. So for example, that what happened back in 2015, the famous case of political scandal of 1MDB, One Malaysia Development Berhad, where it is about our former Prime Minister, Datuk Sri Najib Tun Abdul Razak, who was suspected of transferring 2.67 billion, about 700 million US dollar, from a government-run strategic development business headed by Jolo to his bank account. In Malaysia, the dispute had a significant influence, leading to the collapse of a coalition that had controlled the nation since its independence from British rule in 1957. It's a tiny part of the money allegedly taken from 1MDB, but it is only the first of multiple trials related to Najib's alleged role in the funds robbery. So huge amounts of money are said to have ended up in Najib's personal bank account. So in these cases, we can see a lot of issues that have been raised, and even some of their investigations and trials are not done yet and are not finished yet. And therefore, this is a necessary that the problem of public sector corruption or any other misconduct made by public sector is handled effectively and efficiently, particularly in the context of executing, monitoring, and reviewing development initiatives and programs, so that the welfare of the key stakeholders is not jeopardized and public faith in government is not damaged. So that is all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Izzahani Smiti Kamarizani. So I'm going to present the main issue of the good governance in public sector, which is corruption. So corruption has been defined as the abuse of public power for private gain, or in other words is for personal gain. It is operate in developed and developing countries, both in the public sector, private sector, non-profit and charitable organization. Actually, corruption can be an important obstacle to the growth and the modernization of the country's economy. So the corruption in the low level position could be because of need driven. This is because the low level of civil servant sometimes have insufficient salary to maintain the family living expenses, while the high level could be driven by the greed driven, because the high level position is well known with the payoff from the government itself, so they be able to accommodate their family and the family expenses monthly. So because of they want more money, they will take the bribe for their own self-interest. So in the corruption, there is 5 types of the bribery that usually happen in the government or in any organization. First is for a government contract. Second, government profit. Third is a government revenue. Fourth is for bribery for a time saving and road invention. And finally, number 5 is bribes that affect the outcome of legislative and regulatory process, which is the bribes can be used to convince the authority not to act. So, in order to improve the process of the development of our country, which is Malaysia, Malaysia has been taking action to prevent the rapid increase in the corruption cases, such as the first one is the initiation of the National Anti-Corruption Plan, which is start from 2019 until 2023, which is called as NECP. And in 2010, the government issued a guideline for the implementation of the Integrity Pact in the public procurement, which was supported by NECP to achieve the goal in improving the Malaysian public procurement framework. The problem of the corruption in the country can be solved or reduced if the government get the cooperation from all parties, either from the upper or lower level position, which is to prevent the corruption activity can help the development of the country to be smoother, because the government can focus on one objective, which is the development. In addition, the government also be able to increase the revenue from the transparent payment of taxes, and the government can increase the total expenditure on the development, such as increasing the civil procurement expenditure and improving the assistance system in Malaysia. That's all for me. Thank you.
Hi and Assalamualaikum. My name is Nur Alisha Bidrasi. I will proceed with the next part of our presentation, that is the implication of corruption incident that affect good governance in the Malaysian public sector. The first implication of corruption incident that affect good governance in the Malaysian public sector is that corruption will tarnish the good name and image of the government institutions. According to Hamilah Shamharun, the Senior General Manager of the Operations Division of the Malaysian Institute of the Integrity (IIM), despite the fact that the number of civil servants implicated in corruption cases is small, this indirectly adversely affects the government institutions, as the public sector is basically made up of organizations that is owned and operated by the government, including the government agencies. This act should not happen in the public sector, where the public sector is the center of the public attention, and every single offences that comes from those that are working in the public sector will to some extent tarnish the image and reputation of the government in the eyes of the people. As public servants are chosen to represent the people and the country, the corruption cannot happen at all in the public sector. For the example, 46.3% of 4,860 civil servants who committed corruption cases were arrested from 2014 to June 2019, according to the statistics that released by the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission, that is MACC, where although the number is small, but the impact of the corruption offences not only affects themselves but also affected the government in general. Second implication is that losing the trust and respect of the public. This is because The public is very well aware that when the issue of corruption arises, this will to some extent affect their public interest and can make the public blame the government as the public sector is under the government. According to Blanky Swap and Park, in 2011, corruption among civil servants has eroded the public trust in the government. This attitude has fostered a cynical view towards the government as the government is the service provider for the public. The lack of caring attitude and stern action against the corruption in the public sector undermines the quality of services provided. This affects the public's confidence in the government's ability to provide them with quality services. For example, although Malaysia is ranked 57th out of 180 countries according to the Corruption Perceptions Index dari CPI in 2020, compared to 51st position in 2019, where the index is at 180 countries with the level of public sector corruption, but this still disappoints the people, as corruption must continue to be curbed by the government more effectively and efficiently.
Assalamualaikum, I am Aina. So I will proceed with the third implications of corruption incidents in the Malaysia public sector, which is administration will become weak and chaotic. The administration will become weak, chaotic and worse if corruption is becoming more prevalent, especially among public servants. All the policies and enforcements will be weak and being neglected whenever the corruption had been using as an easiest way for someone to achieve the projects or their dreams. In addition, the law enforcement cannot be carried out fairly and it may overthrow the economy of the country. In general, most of the government service is involved in corruption. As an example, there was previously a case in Sabah where the government committed RM 1.5 billion for a project in the state to deliver water. But when the MACC examined the real cost of the project, it was determined to be less than half of the total release. All the things needs the government's consent. This offers government officials and employees the ability to request comfort for their usual service. Government and legislative bodies may also be destroyed by a culture of corruption. Therefore, what can end corruption is the character of corruption that should be condemned and rejected as a very horrible and reprehensible crime. Thus, in order to maintain the good governance in public sector, the government should avoid any bribes or corruption because it will destroy the administration of the government soon. The last implication of corruption incidents in the Malaysia public sector is the quality of infrastructure or programs will be affected. The infrastructure or programs that have been implemented will be affected if any of the organisers had made an illegal activity like corruption for running the programs or the infrastructure. Nowadays, many of the contractors had corrupt the government offices in order to get the tenders or the projects. As an example, a corruption may be happening when the contractors wanted to get the tenders or project, such as the projects of road construction. A road construction project might be the most profitable project among contractors. So the contractor might be bribes the government sector in order to get the projects. They are just only want to grab the chance to forget a profit we've accepted the projects from the governments. But the fact is, the minimum cost had been used to run the project. When they use the minimum cost to run the project might be affected, which be avoided by all parties because sincerity in our work will benefit not just for us, but the public citizens who can have an advantage of it. Besides that, the society considers this problem of corruptions to be rampant because the government does not have a transparent system, especially in terms of awarding tenders, contracts and other projects, which causes many civil servants to take advantage of this weakness in order to make a profit by giving bribes. After all, the absence of an effective monitoring system that is like cogging on the stairs causes many civil servants to be aroused to commit these crimes. Thus, the social epidemic has spread in our society so that it is considered as the acid of life and is a habit in our country nowadays. Such a perception caused the number of corruption cases to skyrocket and become a thorn in the flesh in our society. So, as a conclusion, a good public ethics would help rebuild the Malaysian systems of good governance with a no corruption tolerance and framework of conventional controls and balancing. Thus, in order maintaining the good governance, the public servants must avoid any corruptions, any bribes, as it can make and lead to a chaotic administration and will make the administrations of the government become weak and worse. According to the Melanie 2017, the importance of good governance is dealing with public money, high level of transparency around public sector organizations, and uncertainty associated with ideas and strategies in the government. So it is important to all public servants to carry out their responsibility in order to maintain the good governance. The good governance comes from good administration that been carried out by public servants itself. So that's all from me. Thank you.